Marcus Thompson never imagined that a simple act of mercy could unravel the darkest secret of his life. When the 67-year-old Vietnam veteran stepped onto his weathered porch that October morning in rural Colorado, he expected nothing more than another lonely day. Instead, he found a trembling German Shepherd puppy, no bigger than his weathered hands, whimpering against the cold wooden boards. The moment their eyes met, something shifted in the autumn air. This wasn't just any stray. The puppy's intelligent gaze held secrets that would shatter everything Marcus believed about his son David's death in Afghanistan 10 years ago. As Marcus lifted the fragile creature, he had no idea he was holding the key to a conspiracy that reached from the mountains of Colorado to the battlefields of the Middle East. 24 hours later, this rescue would expose a truth so devastating it would force an old soldier to fight the most important battle of his life. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Marcus Thompson's weathered hands trembled as he carried the German Shepherd puppy inside his modest wooden home. At 67, the Vietnam veteran had grown accustomed to silence, but the soft whimpering of the small creature filled the emptiness that had consumed his life since Helen's passing 3 years ago. The house still bore the imprints of a family that once thrived within its walls. Helen's reading glasses remained on the kitchen counter where she'd left them during her final battle with cancer. David's army jacket hung in the hallway closet, untouched, since the military chaplain had delivered it along with the folded flag and news of his son's death in Afghanistan a decade ago. Marcus had built this life on routine and remembrance. Each morning, he'd brew coffee for 2 out of habit, then quietly put away the extra cup. He'd tend to Helen's flower garden, though his arthritis made the work increasingly difficult. His diabetes medication sat beside the morning newspaper, a daily reminder of his mortality. The VFW hall knew him as a regular, but even among fellow veterans, Marcus felt isolated by his grief. The puppy's arrival shattered this careful choreography of solitude. As Marcus set the small animal on the kitchen floor, something extraordinary happened. Instead of cowering or exploring randomly as most puppies would, the German Shepherd walked directly to the hallway and sat perfectly still beneath David's framed military portrait. Marcus felt his breath catch. "How could you know?" he whispered to the puppy, whose intelligent brown eyes seemed to hold understanding far beyond his apparent age. The veteran knelt beside the small dog, studying the unusual markings on his fur and the alertness in his posture. This wasn't just any stray. German Shepherds had been David's favorite breed since childhood. The boy had begged for one every Christmas, every birthday, until military service took him away from home for good. "David always said he'd get me one of you fellas when he came back," Marcus said softly, his voice cracking. "Guess the Lord works in mysterious ways." As if responding to his words, the puppy placed a small paw on Marcus's knee and settled against his leg. For the first time in years, Marcus Thompson didn't feel completely alone. Outside, autumn wind rustled through the Colorado pines, but inside, something had shifted. The house no longer felt like a mausoleum of memories, but the beginning of an unexpected second chance. The morning after finding the puppy, Marcus woke to something he hadn't experienced in years: purpose. The small German Shepherd had spent the night curled against his chest, and as golden sunlight filtered through the bedroom curtains, Marcus felt a warmth that had nothing to do with Colorado's mild autumn weather. He'd decided to call the puppy Rex, after Helen's father, a man who'd shown the same quiet loyalty that seemed to radiate from this unusual dog. As Marcus prepared breakfast, Rex demonstrated behavior that defied his apparent age. The puppy didn't stumble or whine like most 8-week-old animals. Instead, he followed Marcus's movements with calculated precision, sitting patiently by the kitchen table as if he'd been trained for months. "You're not like other pups, are you, boy?" Marcus murmured, setting down a bowl of milk. Rex approached the bowl with careful steps, drinking without the messy enthusiasm typical of young dogs. When Marcus accidentally dropped his diabetes medication, Rex immediately nudged the pill bottle toward his feet with his nose. The veteran stared in amazement. "Now how in blazes did you know to do that?" Later that morning, Marcus bundled Rex into his old pickup truck for a visit to Dr. Patricia Wells at the Durango Animal Clinic. Patricia, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and graying hair, had been the town's veterinarian for 15 years. She'd treated every dog, cat, and farm animal within 50 miles, earning a reputation for both professional skill and genuine compassion. "Well, well, what do we have here?" Patricia said as Marcus carried Rex into the examination room. Her smile seemed genuine enough, but Marcus noticed how her eyes lingered on Rex with unusual intensity. "Found him on my porch yesterday morning," Marcus explained. "Poor little fellow was half-starved, but he's got more sense than most grown dogs I've known." Patricia lifted Rex onto the metal examination table, her hands gentle but thorough. "German Shepherds are intelligent breeds, but this level of composure in such a young puppy is remarkable." She paused, running her fingers along Rex's neck. "Marcus, there's something here you need to see." Marcus leaned closer as Patricia parted the fur at the base of Rex's neck. Embedded just beneath the skin was a small, rice-sized object that glinted under the clinic's fluorescent lights. "It's a microchip," Patricia explained, her voice taking on a strange tone. "Most pet chips contain basic owner information, but this one—" She connected a handheld scanner to the chip and frowned at the digital readout. "The data is encrypted, military-grade encryption." A chill ran down Marcus's spine. Military. What would a puppy be doing with military hardware? Patricia's demeanor shifted subtly. She began asking detailed questions about where exactly Marcus had found Rex, whether he'd noticed anyone else in the area, and if he'd contacted authorities about the discovery. Her interest seemed to go far beyond normal veterinary curiosity. "Dr. Wells, is there something you're not telling me?" Marcus asked, his Vietnam instincts kicking in. Something felt wrong about this conversation. Patricia hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "Marcus, I need to make some calls about this chip. There might be people looking for Rex, people with government connections." "Government?" Marcus's voice hardened. "What kind of government business involves puppies?" "The kind that might be related to your son David's military service," Patricia said quietly. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. "What do you know about my son?" Before Patricia could answer, Rex suddenly tensed on the examination table, a low growl rumbling from his small chest. His ears perked forward and he stared intently at the clinic's front door. Moments later, Marcus heard the sound of car doors slamming in the parking lot. Patricia's face went pale. "They're here sooner than I expected." "Who's here?" Marcus demanded, but Patricia was already moving, scooping Rex off the table. "Marcus, listen to me carefully. Take Rex and go out the back door. Don't go home. Don't trust anyone who asks questions about him. There are things about David's death that you don't know, and Rex might be the key to understanding what really happened." The front door chimed as someone entered the clinic. Through the examination room's frosted glass, Marcus could see the silhouettes of multiple figures in dark clothing. Patricia pressed Rex into Marcus's arms. "There's a storage shed behind Miller's feed store on County Road 7. Go there and wait. I'll contact you when it's safe." Marcus's military training took over. Without questions, he slipped out the clinic's rear exit, Rex clutched against his chest. As he reached his pickup truck, he heard raised voices from inside the building. Whatever was happening, Marcus Thompson knew his quiet life in rural Colorado had just ended forever. Marcus drove through the winding Colorado back roads, his knuckles white against the steering wheel as Rex sat alert in the passenger seat. The abandoned storage shed behind Miller's feed store provided temporary refuge, but Marcus's mind raced with questions that demanded answers. Who were those people at Patricia's clinic? What did they want with Rex? And most disturbing of all, what connection could this puppy possibly have to David's death in Afghanistan? The shed smelled of old hay and rusted farm equipment. Marcus found a relatively clean corner and settled down with Rex, his phone buzzing with an unknown number. Against his better judgment, he answered, "Marcus Thompson?" The voice was crisp, authoritative, with the unmistakable tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Who's asking?" "Dr. Richard Steinberg. I believe you have something that belongs to me." Marcus instinctively pulled Rex closer. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The German Shepherd puppy, Mr. Thompson. He's valuable government property, specially trained for military operations. I need him returned immediately. This dog was abandoned on my property. Finders keepers, as far as I'm concerned." Steinberg's laugh was cold. "Mr. Thompson, I'm going to be very clear with you. That animal represents years of specialized training and significant government investment. More importantly, he carries sensitive information that could compromise national security if it falls into the wrong hands." "What kind of information?" Marcus demanded. "The kind that got your son David killed when he tried to interfere with our program." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. His vision blurred as rage and confusion battled in his chest. "What did you say about my son?" "David Thompson was assigned to our forward operating base in Afghanistan. He was supposed to protect our research, not sabotage it. When he threatened to expose our work, well, battlefield accidents happen more often than you'd think." Marcus's hand shook as he gripped the phone. "You're saying David didn't die in combat?" "I'm saying your son was a traitor who prioritized misguided animal welfare over national security. That puppy you're holding was his final act of defiance. David trained him specifically to find you, Mr. Thompson, to deliver evidence that could destroy everything we've built." The shed felt like it was spinning. Marcus looked down at Rex, who was watching him with those impossibly intelligent eyes. Evidence of what? Illegal military animal testing, unauthorized battlefield experiments, elimination of personnel who threatened operational security. Your son documented everything before his unfortunate accident. That dog knows where David hid the proof. Marcus felt sick. "You murdered my boy. I protected American interests." David's bleeding heart sentimentality would have cost lives and compromised critical defense programs. Sometimes difficult decisions must be made for the greater good. "The greater good?" Marcus's voice rose to a shout. "You killed my son over some twisted experiments? I suggest you bring the dog to the coordinates I'm texting you within 6 hours, Mr. Thompson. Refuse, and you'll discover that battlefield accidents can happen in Colorado just as easily as Afghanistan." The line went dead. Marcus stared at his phone as a text message arrived with GPS coordinates for a remote location 30 miles north of Durango. His hands trembled with a combination of grief and fury that threatened to overwhelm him completely. Rex whined softly and placed his small paw on Marcus's knee, the same comforting gesture he'd made since that first night. But now Marcus understood it differently. This wasn't just a puppy seeking affection. This was David's final message, delivered through the most loyal messenger imaginable. "Your daddy sent you to me, didn't he, boy?" Marcus whispered, scratching Rex's ears. He knew something was going to happen. As if in response, Rex trotted to the corner of the shed and began pawing at a loose floorboard. Marcus followed and pried up the wood, revealing a waterproof military pouch hidden in the space below. His breath caught as he recognized David's handwriting on the attached note. "Dad, if you're reading this, I'm probably dead. Rex will find you when it's time. Trust no one except Patricia. The truth is in the mountains where we used to camp. David. Inside the pouch, Marcus found David's field journal, filled with detailed accounts of Dr. Steinberg's illegal experiments on military working dogs. Page after page documented horrific procedures designed to enhance canine intelligence and loyalty through pharmaceutical manipulation and psychological conditioning. Dogs were dying in agony, while Steinberg pursued his vision of creating the perfect military animal. The final entry, dated just 3 days before David's reported death, made Marcus's blood run cold. Steinberg suspects I've been gathering evidence. I've trained Rex with basic commands and sent him toward the mountains. If something happens to me, he'll eventually make his way to Dad. Rex isn't enhanced like the others. He's just a smart dog who understands what loyalty really means. He's carrying everything Steinberg fears most: the truth. Marcus closed the journal, his heart pounding. David hadn't died as a hero in combat. He'd been murdered by his own commanding officer for trying to save innocent animals from torture. The official story, the folded flag, the military funeral. It was all a lie designed to cover up the work of a madman. Rex sat beside him, patient and watchful, as if understanding the weight of the revelation. This puppy wasn't just a pet or even a trained military animal. He was David's final act of love and defiance, carrying the evidence needed to expose his killer and honor his sacrifice. Marcus looked at his watch. 4.5 hours until Steinberg's deadline. 4.5 hours to decide whether to surrender David's final gift or fight for the justice his son had died trying to achieve. The old soldier's decision crystallized with the cold clarity of his combat days. Some battles were worth fighting regardless of the odds. "Well, Rex," he said softly, "looks like your daddy raised us both to be fighters." Marcus Thompson spent the next 3 hours transforming from grieving father into the tactical soldier he'd once been in Vietnam. The storage shed became his command post as he studied David's journal, absorbing every detail of Steinberg's operation and his son's investigation. Rex remained by his side, occasionally nudging Marcus's hand when the veteran's breathing became too shallow, as if the dog sensed when grief threatened to overwhelm strategy. The journal revealed a pattern of corruption that stretched far beyond animal experimentation. Steinberg had been using his military position to conduct unauthorized research on battlefield psychology, manipulating both animals and soldiers through chemical and psychological means. David's notes indicated that at least 17 soldiers had died from Steinberg's enhancement protocols, their deaths covered up as combat casualties. "Your daddy was trying to save lives, Rex," Marcus whispered, his fingers tracing David's careful handwriting. "And that monster killed him for it." As the deadline approached, Marcus made his decision. He wouldn't surrender Rex to Steinberg, but he wouldn't run either. Instead, he'd use the advantage that 40 years of military experience provided. He'd go on the offensive. Patricia Wells arrived at the shed just as the sun began its descent behind the Colorado peaks. Her face was drawn with worry, and she carried a medical bag that seemed oddly heavy for routine veterinary supplies. "Marcus, thank God you're safe," she said, kneeling beside him and Rex. "I've been trying to reach you." "Steinberg called me," Marcus replied coldly. "Told me some interesting things about you and David." Patricia's face went pale. "What did he tell you?" "That you're working with him. That this whole thing is some kind of setup." "Marcus, no!" Patricia said urgently. "I've been working against Steinberg for 2 years. David contacted me when he first discovered the experiments. I'm the one who helped him document everything." She opened her medical bag and withdrew a thick manila folder. "David sent me copies of everything before he died. I've been trying to build a case through proper military channels, but Steinberg has connections at the highest levels. Every time I got close to exposing him, my contacts would disappear or transfer suddenly. Marcus studied her face, his soldier's instincts evaluating her sincerity. If you're really on our side, why did those men show up at your clinic? Because Steinberg suspected I was helping David's family. He's had me under surveillance for months. When you brought Rex in with that military chip, it confirmed his suspicions. Patricia pulled out a series of photographs that made Marcus's stomach turn. Military dogs in various stages of distress, hooked up to IV lines and monitoring equipment. Some appeared to be seizing. Others lay motionless with vacant stares. These were taken at Steinberg's lab in Afghanistan, Patricia explained. David risked his life to get these images. The chemical compounds Steinberg was using weren't just enhancing intelligence, they were destroying the animals' nervous systems. Most died within weeks of treatment. Marcus looked at Rex, healthy and alert in his lap. Why is Rex different? Because David never let Steinberg experiment on him. Rex was David's personal companion, trained through conventional methods. When David realized Steinberg planned to use Rex in the next round of testing, he made his escape plan. The pieces began falling into place for Marcus. David sent Rex to me because he knew I'd protect him. More than that, Patricia said, Rex carries something Steinberg desperately wants to recover. She gently lifted Rex's lip, revealing a small scar along his gum line. David hid a micro SD card in a waterproof capsule, surgically implanted where no scanner would detect it. That card contains video evidence of Steinberg personally conducting the experiments, along with financial records showing how he was selling his research to foreign militaries. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. David literally made Rex a walking testimony against his killer. And if Steinberg gets him back, the first thing he'll do is put Rex under anesthesia to retrieve and destroy that evidence. The weight of responsibility settled on Marcus's shoulders like a familiar burden. He'd carried wounded soldiers through jungle firefights, made life and death decisions under enemy fire. But this felt different. This was personal in a way that transcended duty. "What's our move?" he asked Patricia, falling back into the tactical mindset that had kept him alive in Vietnam. Patricia checked her watch. "We have less than 2 hours before Steinberg's deadline. I've contacted a friend at the FBI who specializes in military corruption cases. Agent Sarah Mitchell is driving down from Denver, but she won't arrive until tomorrow morning. Steinberg won't wait that long. I know. That's why we need to get Rex somewhere safe until the cavalry arrives." Marcus stood up, his joints protesting but his resolve hardening. "No more running. David didn't raise a coward and Helen didn't marry one. If Steinberg wants a fight, we'll give him one." "Marcus, you're talking about taking on a trained military operative with government resources and private security. Lady, I'm talking about getting justice for my son." Rex seemed to sense the shift in mood. He stood up and walked to Marcus's side, his young body radiating the same determination that Marcus felt building in his chest. The puppy might only be 8 weeks old, but he carried himself with the dignity of a soldier completing his final mission. Patricia sighed deeply. "If we're going to do this, we need to be smart about it. Steinberg chose those coordinates for a reason. It's an abandoned mining operation in the mountains, isolated but with only one access road. He'll have the tactical advantage." Marcus smiled grimly. "Then we don't go to his location. We make him come to ours." Over the next hour, Marcus outlined a plan that drew on everything he'd learned about asymmetric warfare in Southeast Asia. They would use Steinberg's arrogance against him, drawing him into a situation where experience mattered more than resources. "We're going to lead him to Devil's Canyon," Marcus explained. "It's where David and I used to camp when he was a boy. I know every rock, every tree, every hiding place." David mentioned it in his note for a reason. Patricia looked skeptical. "You're talking about fighting a battle in terrain that favors defense." "Exactly. Steinberg expects me to either surrender Rex or run. He won't expect an old soldier to choose the high ground and make a stand." As they prepared to leave the storage shed, Marcus felt Rex press against his leg. The puppy looked up at him with those intelligent eyes, and Marcus could swear he saw understanding there. This dog knew the stakes. He knew what his presence meant, what David had died for, and what still needed to be accomplished. "You ready for this, boy?" Marcus asked softly. Rex's tail wagged once, a gesture that seemed less like playful enthusiasm and more like a soldier's acknowledgement of orders received. Patricia gathered her medical supplies while Marcus checked the service pistol he'd kept from his army days. It felt strange to hold a weapon again after so many years of peaceful retirement, but some skills never truly fade. "Marcus," Patricia said quietly, "I need you to know something. If this goes wrong, if Steinberg gets Rex back, your son's sacrifice will have been for nothing. Every animal that died in those experiments, every soldier whose death was covered up, it'll all disappear into classified files that nobody will ever see again." Marcus nodded solemnly. "Then we better not let it go wrong." As they loaded into Marcus's pickup truck, the old veteran felt a familiar sensation he hadn't experienced since Vietnam. It was the cold clarity that came before combat, the focused calm of a soldier who had accepted the possibility of death in service of something greater than himself. Rex settled between Marcus and Patricia, his small body radiating warmth and trust. In 2 hours, they would face the man who had murdered David Thompson. In 2 hours, a 67-year-old veteran and an 8-week-old puppy would either deliver justice or die trying. The Colorado mountains loomed ahead, their peaks touched with the golden light of sunset. Somewhere in those hills lay the answers to a decade of lies, carried in the heart of a dog who understood loyalty better than the humans who had tried to destroy it. Devil's Canyon stretched before them like a natural amphitheater carved from Colorado granite, its steep walls rising 300 feet on either side of a narrow valley floor. Marcus had chosen this location not just for its defensive advantages, but because it held 20 years of memories with David. Every summer camping trip, every father-son hiking adventure, every quiet conversation about life and duty had taken place in these mountains. Now, as the sun dipped behind the western peaks, casting long shadows across the rocky terrain, Marcus prepared for the most important battle of his life. Patricia helped him position supplies behind the large boulder formation that dominated the canyon's eastern approach. Marcus's military training reasserted itself as he evaluated fields of fire, escape routes, and defensive positions. Rex seemed to understand the gravity of the situation, staying close but alert, his young eyes scanning the canyon entrance with remarkable focus. "Marcus, you need to understand what we're up against," Patricia said, checking her medical supplies one final time. "Steinberg won't come alone. He has at least 4 private security contractors, all former military. They'll have night vision, communications equipment, and weapons that make your service pistol look like a toy." Marcus adjusted his position behind the rocks, his weathered hands steady despite the magnitude of what they faced. "Patricia, 40 years ago I held off 2 companies of North Vietnamese regulars with nothing but a rifle and pure stubbornness. These corporate soldiers might have better equipment, but they don't have what we have." "What's that?" "Righteous anger and nothing left to lose." As darkness settled over the canyon, Marcus felt the familiar pre-combat calm that had served him in Vietnam. His breathing slowed, his vision sharpened, and his mind focused with laser precision on the task ahead. Rex curled against his leg, providing warmth and companionship that reminded Marcus he wasn't fighting this battle alone. The first sign of Steinberg's arrival came as headlight beams swept across the canyon entrance. 3 black SUVs rolled to a stop at the mouth of the valley, their occupants remaining hidden behind tinted windows. Marcus estimated at least 12 men, possibly more. The odds were worse than he'd expected, but retreat was no longer an option. A spotlight mounted on the lead vehicle suddenly blazed to life, cutting through the darkness and illuminating Marcus's position. A voice amplified by a megaphone echoed off the canyon walls. "Marcus Thompson, I see you've chosen to make this difficult. Bring the dog down here and we can resolve this professionally." Marcus recognized Steinberg's voice, cold and clinical even when magnified by electronics. He cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted back, "I've got a counter-proposal, Doc. Come up here and face me like a man, and maybe I won't put a bullet between your eyes." Steinberg's laugh carried clearly across the distance. "You're 70 years old, Thompson. You're diabetic, arthritic, and outnumbered 12 to 1. This isn't Vietnam, and heroic gestures won't bring your son back from the dead." "My son's already back," Marcus replied, his hand resting on Rex's head. "He sent me everything I need to put you in prison for the rest of your miserable life." The spotlight shifted, and Marcus heard the distinct sound of vehicle doors opening. Steinberg's men were deploying, beginning their approach up the canyon walls. Marcus had expected this. The narrow valley floor offered no cover, so they would try to gain elevation and catch him in a crossfire from above. "Patricia, you need to get Rex out of here," Marcus whispered urgently. "Take him to the old mining shaft behind us. If things go bad, follow the tunnel to the other side of the mountain." Patricia grabbed his arm. "I'm not leaving you to face this alone." "Yes, you are. David trusted you to protect Rex and get that evidence to the authorities. Don't let my boy down." Before Patricia could argue further, the first muzzle flash lit up the canyon wall to their right. The bullet struck the rock inches from Marcus's head, spraying granite chips across his face. The battle had begun. Marcus returned fire, his service pistol barking 3 times in rapid succession. He couldn't see his targets in the darkness, but he heard a cry of pain that suggested at least one shot had found its mark. The sound triggered memories of jungle firefights from decades past, muscle memory taking over as he moved to a new position. More gunfire erupted from multiple directions as Steinberg's men attempted to establish a perimeter. Marcus counted muzzle flashes and estimated positions, drawing on 40 years of military experience to track his enemy's movements. They were good, but they were also predictable. Corporate soldiers fought by the book, and Marcus had helped write that book in the rice paddies of Southeast Asia. "Thompson!" Steinberg's voice called out, closer now. "You're only prolonging the inevitable. That dog carries classified military property. Interfering with its recovery is treason." "The only traitor here is you," Marcus shouted back, firing toward the sound of Steinberg's voice. "You murdered American soldiers and called it patriotism." A sustained burst of automatic weapons fire forced Marcus to duck behind the boulder, rock chips showering down around him. When the firing stopped, he could hear movement from at least 3 different directions. They were closing in, using superior firepower to pin him down while they maneuvered for killing shots. Rex suddenly tensed against Marcus's leg, a low growl rumbling from his small chest. The puppy was staring intently at a section of canyon wall where shadows seemed deeper than they should be. Marcus followed the dog's gaze and spotted the infrared signature of night vision goggles moving along a ledge 30 yards away. "Good boy," Marcus whispered, adjusting his aim. When the figure moved into a patch of starlight, Marcus squeezed the trigger. The man tumbled from the ledge with a scream that echoed off the canyon walls. But the victory was short-lived. A new voice, calm and professional, spoke from somewhere above them. "Target acquired. Taking the shot." The sniper's bullet struck the rock beside Marcus's head with tremendous force, sending a shower of granite fragments into his face. Blood ran down his cheek as he realized how exposed his position had become. More shots followed, each one closer than the last, forcing him to stay low while Steinberg's men continued their advance. "Patricia, go now," Marcus hissed, but when he turned, he saw that she and Rex had already disappeared into the darkness behind him. Relief flooded through him. Whatever happened next, David's evidence would survive. Steinberg appeared at the canyon entrance, silhouetted against the headlight beams of his vehicles. Even at this distance, Marcus could see the man's arrogance in his posture, the casual confidence of someone accustomed to having others do his killing for him. "Your veterinarian friend won't get far, Thompson," Steinberg called out. "I have men positioned at every exit from these mountains. The dog will be back in my custody before sunrise, and your son's pathetic crusade will be forgotten." Marcus felt rage building in his chest, the same cold fury that had carried him through the worst fighting in Vietnam. But this time, it was personal in a way that transcended even combat. This man had murdered David, covered it up with lies and ceremony, and now threatened the last connection Marcus had to his son. "You want Rex?" Marcus shouted, standing up despite the danger. "Come and take him yourself, you coward! Stop hiding behind other men's guns and face what you did!" Steinberg's laugh carried clearly across the canyon. "I don't hide from anything, old man. I make hard choices that weak-minded people like your son couldn't understand. David died because he put sentimentality over duty. You're about to make the same mistake." The night erupted in gunfire as Steinberg's remaining men opened up with everything they had. Bullets sparked off rocks, whined through the air, and chewed chunks from the boulder that sheltered Marcus. The old veteran pressed himself against the stone, his service pistol feeling pathetically inadequate against the overwhelming firepower arrayed against him. But as the barrage continued, Marcus noticed something that gave him hope. The shooting was undisciplined, panicked. These men were spraying bullets wildly rather than taking careful aim. They were afraid, rattled by the loss of their comrades and the stubborn resistance of one old soldier. When the firing finally stopped, Marcus heard Steinberg shouting angrily at his men. "Cease fire! I need him alive to tell me where the dog went. And watch your backgrounds. You're shooting at each other." The admission revealed everything Marcus needed to know. Steinberg was losing control of the situation. His carefully planned operation was degenerating into chaos, and desperate men make fatal mistakes. Marcus checked his remaining ammunition, 4 bullets left in his pistol, plus 1 spare magazine. Against professional killers with automatic weapons, it wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. Somewhere in the darkness ahead of him, Richard Steinberg was preparing for a final assault. Somewhere behind him, Patricia and Rex were carrying the evidence that would expose a decade of lies and murder. Marcus Thompson settled back against the boulder and waited for his last battle to begin. The silence that followed the gunfire felt heavier than the bullets themselves. Marcus pressed his back against the cold granite, listening to the subtle sounds of movement in the darkness around him. His heart hammered against his ribs, not from fear, but from the devastating realization that was slowly crystallizing in his mind. Patricia hadn't made it out. The terrible truth announced itself through a burst of static from Steinberg's radio, followed by a voice Marcus didn't recognize. "Package secured. Female subject and canine asset in custody, returning to base position." Marcus felt something die inside his chest. The woman who had risked everything to help David, who had spent 2 years gathering evidence against Steinberg's crimes, was now in the hands of the very monster she'd been fighting. And Rex, David's final gift, the living testimony to his son's courage, was once again in Steinberg's control. "Did you hear that, Thompson?" Steinberg's voice carried clearly across the canyon, filled with savage satisfaction. "Your veterinarian friend decided to play hero, just like your son. It never ends well for heroes in my experience." Marcus closed his eyes, fighting waves of grief and rage that threatened to overwhelm his tactical thinking. In Vietnam, he'd learned that emotion could get you killed faster than enemy bullets. But this felt different. This was personal failure on a scale that made combat losses seem abstract by comparison. "Patricia's alive, if you're wondering," Steinberg continued, his tone conversational, almost friendly. "I need information from her about what David told her, what evidence she might have hidden elsewhere. The dog, of course, will undergo immediate surgical recovery of the implanted device. Both procedures will be quite unpleasant, I'm afraid." The words hit Marcus like physical blows. He thought of Rex, barely 8 weeks old, facing the kind of torture that had killed so many other animals in Steinberg's experiments. He thought of Patricia, whose only crime had been trying to honor David's memory and expose the truth. "Here's what's going to happen, old man," Steinberg called out. "You're going to surrender yourself, and in exchange, I'll make their deaths quick and painless. Continue this foolish resistance, and I'll ensure they suffer for days before the end comes." Marcus felt his remaining strength drain away like water through cupped hands. At 67, with diabetes and arthritis, facing trained killers with superior numbers and equipment, he'd been fighting a losing battle from the start. But he'd held on to hope that Patricia and Rex might escape, that David's sacrifice would ultimately mean something. Now that hope was gone. "You have 60 seconds to decide, Thompson. After that, I begin the interrogation procedures." Marcus looked at his service pistol, then at the unforgiving darkness surrounding his position. 4 bullets against an unknown number of enemies. Even if he managed to kill Steinberg, the man's soldiers would execute Patricia and Rex in retaliation. The tactical situation was hopeless. But as he prepared to call out his surrender, Marcus heard something that changed everything. The distant sound of helicopter rotors cutting through the night air. Steinberg heard it too. "What the hell is that?" The scientist's voice had lost its confident tone, replaced by sharp concern. The sound grew louder, and Marcus could make out multiple aircraft approaching from the east. Military helicopters based on the distinctive thrum of their rotors. His heart began to pound with something that might have been hope. Patricia's voice suddenly crackled over what must have been Steinberg's own radio system. "FBI agent Sarah Mitchell, Colorado State Patrol and U.S. Army CID are approximately 2 minutes from your position. Dr. Steinberg, you and your men are completely surrounded." Marcus stared into the darkness, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. Patricia's voice continued. "Dr. Steinberg, I've been wearing a wire for the past 6 months. Every conversation, every threat, every admission of guilt has been recorded and transmitted to federal authorities. Your confession tonight about murdering David Thompson has been heard by a federal judge who issued arrest warrants 40 minutes ago." The canyon erupted in chaos as Steinberg's men realized their situation had completely reversed. Panicked voices shouted conflicting orders. Vehicle engines roared to life as someone attempted to flee. But the helicopter sounds were directly overhead now, and powerful searchlights began sweeping the canyon, turning night into harsh, artificial day. "All personnel on the ground, drop your weapons and place your hands on your heads." The amplified voice from above carried absolute authority. "This area is surrounded by federal agents. Any resistance will be met with deadly force." Marcus watched from his rocky shelter as Steinberg's carefully planned operation disintegrated into chaos. Men threw down their weapons and raised their hands as red laser dots from sniper sights danced across their chests. The corporate soldiers, so confident when hunting an old man and a puppy, surrendered with remarkable speed when faced with professional law enforcement. But Steinberg himself was nowhere to be seen. Marcus heard running footsteps approaching his position and raised his pistol, unsure whether federal agents could distinguish him from Steinberg's men in the confusion. But the voice that called out was Patricia's. "Marcus, it's me, and I have Rex." She appeared around the boulder, the German shepherd puppy cradled in her arms. Both looked shaken but unharmed. Marcus felt tears streaming down his face as he reached for Rex, the small dog pressing against his chest with desperate affection. "How?" Marcus managed to ask. Patricia was breathing hard, adrenaline making her words tumble together. "The wire I've been wearing for months transmitted everything tonight. The FBI was already mobilizing when you called Steinberg, but when they heard him confess to murdering David, every federal agency in Colorado got involved. I managed to slip away during the first exchange of gunfire and activated an emergency beacon." The reunion was interrupted by a new voice, cold and desperate. "How touching! A family reunion!" Dr. Richard Steinberg stepped into the circle of light cast by the helicopters overhead. His professional composure had cracked, revealing something savage underneath. In his right hand, he held a military-grade pistol pointed directly at Rex. "You think you've won, Thompson? You think your son's pathetic crusade means anything? I've dedicated my life to advancing human capability through any means necessary. David was a weak-minded fool who prioritized animal welfare over human advancement." Marcus slowly stood up, his own weapon trained on Steinberg. "My son was a better man than you'll ever be." "Your son was a traitor who died screaming my name," Steinberg snarled. "Just like you're about to." The two men faced each other across 10 feet of rocky ground, their weapons aimed, their decades of conflict distilled into this single moment. Above them, federal agents shouted commands through megaphones, but both men ignored everything except the hatred burning between them. "Go ahead, old man," Steinberg whispered. "Pull the trigger." "But I'll take your precious dog with me, and David's evidence dies too." Marcus felt time slow to a crawl, his finger tightening on the trigger as he stared into the eyes of his son's killer. This was the moment he'd dreamed of for 10 years without knowing it, the chance to deliver justice with his own hands. But as he prepared to fire, Rex suddenly barked once, sharp and commanding. The sound broke Marcus's concentration for just an instant, but it was enough. The canyon exploded in gunfire, and everything changed forever. The gunshot that echoed through Devil's Canyon didn't come from Marcus's weapon or Steinberg's. It came from above, where FBI sniper agent Sarah Mitchell had been tracking both men through her scope for the past 30 seconds, waiting for a clean shot that wouldn't endanger the hostages. Steinberg's body crumpled to the rocky ground, his weapon spinning away into the darkness. The bullet had struck him center mass, ending his threat instantly, but leaving him alive enough for the justice system to claim him. Marcus stood frozen, his fingers still on his trigger, staring at the man who had murdered his son, now writhing in pain on the canyon floor. "Federal agents, drop your weapon and step away." Marcus slowly lowered his pistol and placed it on the ground, his hands shaking not from fear but from the sudden absence of the rage that had sustained him through the night. Rex immediately ran to him, pressing his small body against Marcus's legs in a gesture of comfort that nearly broke the old soldier's composure completely. Patricia appeared at his side, her own hands trembling as federal agents swarmed into the canyon. "Marcus, it's over. We did it. David's evidence is safe." But Marcus felt no sense of victory, only a hollow emptiness where his anger had lived for 10 years. He watched as paramedics worked on Steinberg, stabilizing the man who had destroyed so many lives. Part of him wished the sniper's aim had been a few inches higher and to the left. Agent Sarah Mitchell approached them, a tall woman in her 40s with the bearing of someone accustomed to dealing with the worst humanity had to offer. "Mr. Thompson, I'm FBI Agent Mitchell. Dr. Wells has been working with us for the past 6 months to build a case against Dr. Steinberg." Marcus looked at Patricia with new understanding. 6 months. "You've been playing a dangerous game." Patricia nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Ever since you first brought Rex to my clinic, I knew this day would come. David contacted me 2 years ago when he first discovered what Steinberg was doing. He made me promise that if anything happened to him, I'd make sure the truth came out. Agent Mitchell gestured toward the medical team loading Steinberg onto a stretcher. "Doctor, Steinberg will survive his wounds and stand trial for the murder of your son, along with 17 other service members and numerous counts of animal cruelty. The evidence Dr. Wells and your son gathered is more than sufficient for conviction." Marcus felt Rex pressing against his leg and looked down at the puppy who had endured so much for the sake of justice. "What happens to Rex now? He's been through hell because of that monster." "Rex goes home with you, Mr. Thompson," Agent Mitchell said with a rare smile. "As far as the government is concerned, he's just a dog you rescued. The evidence he was carrying has been recovered and turned over to military prosecutors." The agent paused, her expression growing more serious. "There's something else you need to know. Dr. Steinberg's operation was larger than we initially suspected. We've identified at least 3 other research facilities where similar experiments were conducted. Your son's investigation has potentially saved hundreds of animals and exposed a network of illegal military contractors." Marcus felt a strange lightness in his chest, as if a weight he'd carried for a decade was finally lifting. "David always did think bigger than the rest of us." Over the next several hours, as federal agents processed the crime scene and took statements, Marcus learned the full scope of his son's heroism. David had spent months documenting Steinberg's crimes, not just the animal experiments, but evidence of murder, fraud, and treason that reached into the highest levels of military contracting. "Your son saved my life too," Patricia told Marcus as they waited for the paperwork to be completed. "Steinberg was planning to eliminate anyone who knew about his research. If David hadn't gotten Rex to you when he did, we might never have had the evidence needed to stop him." As dawn broke over the Colorado mountains, casting golden light across Devil's Canyon, Marcus stood with Rex at the spot where they'd made their stand against Steinberg's forces. The puppy sat quietly beside him, no longer the frightened animal he'd found on his porch, but not yet the full-grown dog he would become. "Your daddy was one hell of a soldier," Marcus said softly to Rex. "He died fighting for what was right, just like he lived." Agent Mitchell approached with a final piece of business. "Mr. Thompson, there's going to be a formal military investigation into your son's death. His combat record will be corrected, and he'll receive posthumous recognition for his service in exposing this conspiracy." Marcus nodded, though the formal recognition felt less important than the knowledge that David's sacrifice had meaning. "What about the other families, the other soldiers who died because of Steinberg?" "They'll be notified and their records corrected as well. It's going to take months to unravel everything, but your son's investigation has given us the roadmap we need." The drive home from Devil's Canyon felt different than any journey Marcus could remember. Rex slept in the passenger seat, exhausted from the night's events, but safe at last. Patricia followed in her own vehicle, having volunteered to help Rex transition to his new life with Marcus. When they reached Marcus's modest wooden house, the familiar space looked transformed by morning light and the promise of new beginnings. Helen's flowers still bloomed in the garden she'd loved, and David's portrait still hung in the hallway, but the overwhelming sadness that had permeated every room was beginning to lift. "This is your home now, boy," Marcus told Rex as they walked through the front door. "No more running, no more hiding. Just a family of 2 getting to know each other." Rex explored the house with the careful attention of a dog claiming his territory. He sniffed every corner, investigated every room, and finally settled in the living room where David's army jacket still hung over a chair. The puppy curled up beneath the jacket, and Marcus understood that Rex felt David's presence here too. Patricia stayed for dinner, helping Marcus understand Rex's needs and temperament. "He's remarkably well adjusted considering everything he's been through," she observed. "David trained him with love and patience, not fear and intimidation like Steinberg used with the other animals." As evening approached and Patricia prepared to leave, she handed Marcus a sealed envelope. "David asked me to give you this if Rex ever made it to you safely. I've been carrying it for 2 years, waiting for the right moment." Marcus's hands shook as he opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. David's familiar handwriting covered both sides of the page. "Dad, if you're reading this, then Rex found you and you're both safe. I know this is hard to understand, but I couldn't let Dr. Steinberg continue hurting innocent animals in the name of science. Mom always said that standing up for those who can't defend themselves is what makes us human. I hope I'm making you both proud. Rex isn't like the other dogs here. He's smart and loyal, but more than that, he has a good heart, just like you taught me to have. Take care of him, Dad, but let him take care of you, too. You've been alone too long since Mom died, and nobody should have to carry grief by themselves. I love you, Dad. Thank you for teaching me to be a man who does what's right, even when it's hard, even when it's dangerous. Rex will help you remember what it feels like to have family again. Your son, David, P.S. Rex knows all the commands you taught me when I was little. Try attention and see what happens." Marcus wiped tears from his eyes and looked at Rex, who had been watching him read with remarkable attention. "Rex, attention!" The puppy immediately sat at perfect attention, his small body rigid with military bearing, his eyes fixed on Marcus with absolute focus. It was exactly the same posture David had learned as a boy when Marcus taught him basic military discipline. "At ease, soldier," Marcus whispered, and Rex relaxed, his tail wagging slightly. For the first time in 10 years, Marcus Thompson smiled with genuine joy. His son was gone, but David's love lived on in the loyal heart of a German Shepherd puppy who had traveled across continents and through unimaginable danger to deliver a father's final gift. Justice had been served, truth had been revealed, and a family had been reborn in the most unexpected way. As Rex settled beside Marcus's chair for their first peaceful evening together, the old soldier realized that sometimes the most important battles aren't fought with guns and grenades, but with love, loyalty, and the unshakable belief that doing right matters more than being safe. 6 months after that night in Devil's Canyon, Marcus Thompson stood before a military honor guard at Fort Carson, Colorado, watching as they folded an American flag with the precision that only comes from thousands of repetitions. But this ceremony was different from the one held 10 years ago when David's body had come home in a sealed casket surrounded by lies and cover-ups. Today, the truth was being honored. "Staff Sergeant David Thompson," the chaplain's voice carried across the assembly of veterans, military officials, and family friends, "gave his life in service to the highest ideals of military honor. His investigation into criminal activities within the ranks saved countless lives and upheld the sacred trust between America and those who serve her." Rex sat at perfect attention beside Marcus's chair, wearing a small ceremonial collar that Patricia had crafted for the occasion. The German Shepherd, now 6 months older and significantly larger, had grown into the magnificent dog that David had envisioned. His coat gleamed with health, his eyes held the same intelligent awareness they'd shown as a puppy, and his loyalty to Marcus had only deepened with time. The past months had transformed both their lives in ways Marcus could never have imagined. What began as an old man rescuing a stray puppy had evolved into something far more meaningful, a partnership built on mutual healing and shared purpose. After Dr. Steinberg's arrest and conviction, Marcus had expected to return to the quiet isolation of his retirement. Instead, he found himself at the center of a new mission that gave his remaining years profound meaning. Rex, it turned out, possessed an extraordinary gift for sensing emotional distress in humans. Whether this was natural ability, enhanced by David's training, or simply the result of his own traumatic experiences, the dog seemed to know exactly when someone needed comfort. Dr. Patricia Wells had been the first to notice Rex's therapeutic abilities. During his regular veterinary checkups, Rex would invariably gravitate toward other pet owners who seemed anxious or depressed, offering silent companionship that somehow eased their distress. "Marcus," Patricia had said after witnessing Rex console a young mother whose dog was being treated for cancer, "I think David may have left us more than just evidence of Steinberg's crimes. I think he left us a healer." The idea had taken root, slowly. Marcus began bringing Rex to the local VFW post, where the dog's presence seemed to ease the burden of veterans struggling with their own invisible wounds. Men who hadn't spoken about their combat experiences in decades found themselves opening up to Marcus while Rex lay quietly at their feet, providing wordless understanding. Word spread through Colorado's veteran community about the old soldier and his remarkable dog. Soon, Marcus was receiving invitations to speak at VA hospitals, veteran support groups, and military family gatherings. Rex became an unofficial therapy animal, bringing comfort to those who understood the cost of service in ways that civilian counselors sometimes couldn't. "You know what the beautiful thing is?" Marcus often told Patricia during their weekly dinners together. "David always wanted to help people. Even after death, he's still doing it through Rex." The military investigation into Steinberg's crimes had exposed a network of corruption that reached far beyond animal experimentation. 17 families learned the truth about their loved ones' deaths, receiving closure and justice they'd been denied for years. The scandal led to reforms in military contracting procedures and established new oversight mechanisms for research involving both human and animal subjects. Marcus had testified before a congressional subcommittee, his weathered hands steady as he read from David's journal, and described the night his son's killer was brought to justice. The hearing room fell silent when he concluded his statement with David's own words. "Standing up for those who can't defend themselves is what makes us human." But the formal recognition and political impact, while important, meant less to Marcus than the quiet moments of daily life with Rex. The dog had filled the silence in his house with sounds of companionship, the click of nails on hardwood floors, the rustle of movement from his bed beside Marcus's chair, the occasional soft woof of contentment when Marcus scratched behind his ears. Rex had also introduced Marcus to a community he'd forgotten existed. Dog owners at the local park greeted him by name. The staff at the pet supply store knew Rex's favorite treats. Children in the neighborhood had learned that the big German Shepherd was gentle despite his imposing size, and their parents appreciated how Rex seemed to calm anxious kids with his patient presence. Most importantly, Rex had helped Marcus reconnect with his own capacity for joy. The old soldier found himself laughing at the dog's playful antics, taking pride in Rex's achievements during training sessions, and experiencing the simple pleasure of companionship after years of solitude. "Helen would have loved you," Marcus often told Rex during their evening walks through the neighborhood where he'd once felt like a ghost among the living. "She always said I needed someone to keep me honest and make sure I didn't take myself too seriously." As the flag-folding ceremony concluded, the commanding officer approached Marcus with the precision-folded banner. "On behalf of a grateful nation and the United States Army, please accept this flag as a symbol of our appreciation for Staff Sergeant David Thompson's faithful and dedicated service." Marcus accepted the flag with steady hands, feeling the weight of fabric and honor that should have been given to him 10 years ago. But he also felt something else: peace. David's death had finally been acknowledged for what it truly was, not a random casualty of war, but a deliberate sacrifice made in service of justice and mercy. After the ceremony, as guests gathered for the reception, Marcus found a quiet moment with Rex beside the memorial wall where David's name had been added to the roster of fallen heroes. The dog sat pressed against his leg, offering comfort in the way that had become as natural as breathing between them. "Your daddy would be proud of us, boy," Marcus said softly. "We finished what he started. We got justice for him and all the others who couldn't speak for themselves." Patricia joined them, along with Agent Sarah Mitchell, who had become an unexpected friend during the months of investigation and trial preparation. The three humans stood in comfortable silence, watching Rex investigate the base of the memorial with the careful attention he brought to everything in his world. "What's next for you two?" Agent Mitchell asked. Marcus considered the question. At 73, with his diabetes well managed and his arthritis kept at bay by regular activity, he felt healthier than he had in years. Rex, at barely a year old, was entering the prime of his life with energy and intelligence that seemed to grow daily. "We're thinking about making this therapy work official," Marcus replied. "Patricia's been helping me research the certification process. Turns out there's a real need for veteran-to-veteran support programs, especially ones that include trained therapy animals." "The David Thompson Foundation for Military Animal Welfare," Patricia added. "We're working on establishing it as a nonprofit. Marcus would train therapy dogs specifically for veteran support, using methods David developed. Rex would be our demonstration model and mascot." Agent Mitchell smiled. "David's legacy keeps growing." As the afternoon drew to a close and guests began departing, Marcus loaded Rex into the passenger seat of his pickup truck for the drive home. And the dog had claimed that spot months ago and rode with the dignity of a co-pilot on important missions. The house that had once felt like a tomb now welcomed them with warmth and life. Rex's toys were scattered across the living room floor. His food and water bowls sat in the kitchen beside Marcus's coffee maker. A large dog bed occupied the space next to Marcus's recliner, though Rex usually preferred to lie directly at the old soldier's feet. As evening settled over the Colorado mountains, Marcus sat in his chair with Rex sprawled across his feet, reading the newspaper account of David's ceremony. The article captured the basic facts, but missed the deeper truth. That love transcends death, that loyalty creates bonds stronger than time, and that sometimes salvation comes in forms we never expect. Rex stirred, lifting his head to gaze at Marcus with eyes that held intelligence, affection, and something that looked remarkably like gratitude. The dog seemed to understand that he had found not just a home, but a purpose that honored both his training and his heart. "Ready for tomorrow, partner?" Marcus asked, scratching behind Rex's ears. The dog's tail thumped twice against the floor, a soldier's acknowledgement that he was ready for whatever mission awaited them next. Marcus Thompson thought his life was over when he lost his wife, Helen, and son, David. At 67, he was just going through the motions, setting 2 plates for dinner out of habit, talking to photographs instead of people. Sound familiar? Maybe you're facing your own empty nest, recent loss, or wondering if your best years are behind you. But Marcus discovered something profound that October morning when he found Rex on his porch. It's never too late for a second chapter. What started as rescuing a stray puppy became a mission that gave his remaining years deep meaning. Through Rex, Marcus found his way back to community, purpose, and joy he thought was gone forever. He learned that love doesn't end with loss, it transforms. His house went from feeling like a tomb to becoming a home filled with laughter, companionship, and new adventures. At 73, Marcus is healthier and happier than he's been in decades, running a therapy dog program that helps other veterans heal. Sometimes the Lord doesn't take away our pain. He sends someone with 4 legs and a loyal heart to help us carry it. Your second chance might be closer than you think. What unexpected blessing has entered your life during a difficult season? Have you ever experienced a moment when helping someone else ended up healing your own heart? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what another person needs to hear today.